Headphone enthusiasts might not be aware of who Fosi Audio are, however Fosi Audio have been making a name for themselves for making small, well-performing and very affordable hi-fi equipment and seem to have a particular focus on speaker amplifiers. Fosi reached out to me and asked if I wanted to check out one of their speaker amps, and as a headphone guy and someone who only uses active monitor speakers, there's no way for me to test out this equipment. So I asked Fosi if they would send over one of their headphone amplifiers, and here it is, the K5 Pro Gaming DAC, which is ideal as I'm a fairly hardcore gamer. So I've been putting the K5 Pro through its paces, and it's time to talk about whether or not this little affordable DAC is any good. Hey guys, this is Noel and this is Wheezy Tech, and if you're new to this channel, I do tech news and reviews on a somewhat irregular schedule, but on this channel I like to talk about whatever's interesting to me and give you my honest take on it. Fosi Audio sent over the K5 Pro Gaming DAC to me for free for the purposes of review, however that will not affect the outcome of my review, and they've not asked or paid for me to say anything nice about it, and in fact they have no say in my review whatsoever, and will be seeing this review for the first time along with you guys. So with all that said, let's just get on with it. So this is the Fosi Audio K5 Pro Gaming DAC, and why is it called a gaming DAC? Well, unlike a lot of other DAC amp combos, the K5 Pro features a microphone input for voice communication as well as a headphone output. This doesn't have to be limited to gaming, of course. People who work from home and take calls on Teams and Skype and Zoom and so on could also find this device useful. One great thing about the K5 Pro compared to a lot of other gaming-oriented devices is that this does not require any drivers or software to run, it's just plug and play with your PC. Also note that despite the name Gaming DAC, this is not just a DAC, but a DAC and amplifier combo unit. That means the K5 Pro has both a DAC and a headphone amplifier built into a single unit, and this is important to understand as a DAC doesn't always come with a headphone amplifier built in. There are lots of standalone DACs on the market that do not have headphone outputs, and it's important to understand that a DAC and an amplifier are separate categories of devices. It can be confusing as there are a lot of combination devices like this that have a DAC and a headphone amplifier built in that are often referred to as just a DAC, which can be a little bit misleading and trips up many a newcomer. So to simplify things, the K5 Pro is both a DAC and a headphone amplifier with a microphone input. The Fosi Audio K5 Pro is a very compact little device. Including the knobs and connections, it measures 125mm long, 85mm wide and 35mm tall. The weight of the unit is 260 grams. I say all of this because with the very compact chassis and the fact that it is entirely powered by the USB connection, this could make an ideal portable unit for laptop users and LAN gamers and people who work and play on the go. The chassis itself is entirely made from metal. It feels like aluminium or aluminum for those across the pond. Up front there are dual 3.5mm connections, one for the mic input and one for the headphone output, designed to accommodate the standard dual 3.5mm connections of your typical wired gaming headsets. In the box there is also an adapter to convert any headset that uses a 4-pole TRRS connector, such as those seen on headsets designed for use with mobile phones. What makes the K5 Pro stand out from other similar gaming-oriented devices is the inclusion of physical EQ knobs on the front of the unit. So on the front there are 3 knobs, one for volume, which also doubles as the power switch by pushing and holding until the device turns on. Once turned on, a momentary tap of the volume knob cycles the device through 3 different input methods, which we will talk about shortly. Next to the volume knob are 2 EQ knobs, one for bass and the other for treble, allowing for some limited EQ customization on the fly without the need for any app. Just turn the knobs to taste, nice and simple. I'll talk a little bit more about the EQ in the sound section. The knobs themselves are knurled metal for grip, feel nice and smooth to turn with a good amount of resistance to them. And the EQ knobs are indented at the neutral position so you can tell where the center point is by feel alone. On the rear of the device we find the I/O. Starting on the left there is the USB-C connector for power and for the USB connection to your computer. Next there is an optical Toslink connection and a coaxial digital connection for alternative audio input methods. Note that you will only be able to input a signal for the mic when connected via the USB connection. Over on the right side are stereo RCA outputs, so you can route a signal from the DAC to a pair of speakers, either to active speakers or to a separate speaker amplifier. Included in the box is a USB-C cable that has USB-C at one end and options for USB-C and USB-A at the other end with a little adapter. Also included is an optical Toslink cable and the previously mentioned TRRS to dual 3.5mm adapter cable. Overall, the build construction and selection of I/O is pretty decent, and with the metal chassis, the K5 Pro feels like a quality device. This leads me on to my first criticisms of the device, which are related to the knobs. Each of the knobs on the device are marked with a center line indicator. All three knobs align perfectly at their minimum position, but dialing the EQ knobs to the indented neutral position at the center shows that the indicator markings do not quite line up with the center point. Of course, it would be fair to argue that with no other markings on the device to indicate the knob position, that it doesn't really matter. The center point can be found by feel with the physical indented resting position at the neutral position, and EQ settings will be done according to taste by how it sounds. However, I know that this visual indicator misalignment will bug some people, and yes, I pulled the knobs off and tried to align them correctly, but as the pots and knobs are splined, they're limited by the splines and how they can be aligned. The other critique I have in regards to the knobs is in relation to the cramped feel due to the compact nature of the chassis. There is no way to get your fingers between each knob when turning them, so you sort of have to pinch vertically, which then puts your fingers or knuckles in conflict with the desktop, and you end up having to lift the device slightly off the desk. That's all to say that certainly the ergonomics are very cramped and it is a little bit fiddly. That's to be expected for a compact device like this, and it's certainly not unique to the K5 Pro, but it is something to be aware of. The specification of the Fosi Audio K5 Pro is pretty impressive for such an affordable little device. Suitable for headphones from 16 ohms all the way up to 300 ohms, the output power is 500 milliwatts at 32 ohms and 80 milliwatts at 300 ohms, which isn't too shabby at all, and is enough to get the PC38X headset that I've been using to test the K5 Pro to ear-splitting levels of volume, and is plenty enough to drive headphones like the Sennheiser HD650, which is a decent amount of headroom. This is certainly a lot more power than you can expect any motherboard audio outputs to provide, and should serve as a decent upgrade from onboard audio. When connected to the computer via USB, the K5 Pro requires no drivers or software to be installed. It should work as plug and play, although do note that even when connected via USB, the device only shows up in Windows when it is powered on by pressing that volume button for a couple of seconds. The K5 Pro shows up as a single input and single output device. For output, the K5 Pro supports sample rates of 16-bit 44.1 kHz up to 24-bit 96 kHz, and the mic input supports a sample rate of 48 kHz in either 16 or 24-bit. Next, let's talk about the sound of the Fosi Audio K5 Pro gaming DAC, and this is always a difficult one when talking about DACs and amps, as generally speaking DACs and amps don't have much of, if any, sound of their own. Many so-called audiophiles will often exaggerate the differences between DACs and amps, which is misleading and results in a general perception that whatever differences there are between devices is large and noticeable, when this couldn't be further from the truth. Those with the golden ears to discern the differences between DACs and amps are usually well-trained and actually quite rare people. And there are a certain subset of those who claim to hear those differences for which it is all in their head. All of that is to say that you, the average person, probably shouldn't stress too much about this. As for the Fosi Audio K5 Pro, I think that most people looking at this device will be doing so as an upgrade to the onboard audio from their PC motherboard, and I'm happy to say that the K5 Pro is most definitely a large upgrade from the average PC motherboard. I have yet to hear audio from any PC motherboard, no matter how high-end, that actually sounds good. Sure, they are generally better these days than they were in the past, but that doesn't really say all that much. With the K5 Pro, compared to onboard audio, you're getting a much cleaner and more detailed sound that is capable of driving many more headphones than the average motherboard audio. And as for tonality and those EQ settings, well, I've taken some measurements of the output at the various EQ positions, and those are represented here on this graph. The K5 Pro has one knob for bass and one knob for treble, which is very limited in terms of what you can adjust and lacks any mid-range EQ. However, this is at least going to allow you to turn up or down the bass and treble. Turning both down will give you a more mid-forward presentation, and turning both up will give you a more scooped mid sound. The crossover point of the EQ looks to be somewhere around 750 to 800 Hz. Therefore, turning up the bass does also turn up the lower mids in the process. So overzealous application of this knob will lead to a muddier sound, although a more gentle application does serve to boost the bass and also add some warmth. As you can see from the graph, adjusting the bass knob to the extremes gives a whopping 14 dB boost or 12 dB cut at 40 Hz, and a 4 dB boost or 3 dB cut at 200 Hz. So this is pretty extreme, but shows off that there is plenty of room for adjustment here to taste. The same can also be said for the treble boost. Of course, all this EQ business is something that could also be achieved using software. Many other devices come with software to control them, and there are great system-wide EQ options like Equalizer APO. However, it is pretty cool to see a physical EQ on a device like this, especially at this price point. I am a big fan of physical controls over software adjustments, and I think that the lack of any need to install any software could be a selling point for this device. Regardless of how limited it is, having only 2 bands of EQ to adjust, it will allow you to play with the EQ and get an understanding of how this affects the sound, which will also help you to understand and dial in the sound of your headphones to taste. And it will allow you to make in-game adjustments on the fly with a simple twist of the knob, without needing to Alt-Tab out of the game to make some adjustments in software. Another thing to consider with the sound of any device like this is noise and distortion characteristics. Fosi Audio claim a total harmonic distortion of less than 0.003% and a signal-to-noise ratio of 110 dB+, and I'd like to be able to measure this myself, but I'm not confident in being able to do accurate measurements with the equipment that I have here. However, the claim specification is good, and I'm willing to bet the K5 Pro is a hell of a lot cleaner than whatever your PC's motherboard is putting out. I will say that I'm not hearing any audible noise floor, any hissing, any crackling, or anything like that in any normal use, and I tried using some sensitive IEMs which would usually highlight any noise floor, and could again hear nothing in normal use, only hearing a background hiss once I started cranking the volume knob to a level that would cause hearing damage if there was any audio playing, which is to be expected. All of this is to say that this is a clean sounding amplifier, and I think that whatever the noise floor of this device is, it's not something to be concerned about. The Fosi Audio K5 Pro comes in at around 80 UK pounds or $80 US, and for this price I think it provides excellent value for money. Other alternatives for this kind of device are products like the EPOS GSX 1000 and the Go XLR at the high end. These provide a good few extra features such as microphone effects, audio mixers or surround sound, but also come with a significantly higher price tag. At a similar price point to the Fosi Audio K5 Pro, you also have devices like the Sonic Gaming DAC, the EPOS GSX 300. You also have a few devices from Sound Blaster. Many of these other devices require software installation to provide the EQ features, if there are any available at all. There are no other gaming DACs on the market that I'm aware of at least that have physical EQ controls like the K5 Pro, at least not in this kind of price bracket. The Fosi Audio K5 Pro is an affordable and compact little gaming DAC with a decent power output to drive your favorite gaming headset, with a microphone input and a good clean sound that should provide an excellent upgrade from motherboard audio. The inclusion of a physical EQ is a strong selling point for the device, as is its compact and portable size and single cable connection via USB-C. Sure, the knobs are very cramped and fiddly, but this is the trade-off for having such a small device. On the whole, I think that if you are looking for an upgrade to your motherboard audio with a microphone input and the ability to EQ without the need to install any software, the Fosi Audio K5 Pro is definitely worth the look. Right, that's it from me for this video, and if you like this, then make sure you hit like, get subscribed, all of that stuff, and I'll have another video for you whenever I post one. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.